Hey podcasters, Ryan Otto here. Before today's episode, I just want to let you all know that I've gone all in short letting on booking.com. Back in 2005, the returns were good, but nothing like what we're achieving 14 years later. Because right now, every £1,000 of market rent I used to receive from a tenant is now returning £3,000 per month on the exact same rental property, which is a rental increase of 199%. My friends, if you leave a podcast review and tag me with it on any social platform, I'll send you a free copy of my rent arbitrage model, which is the unlock for you to do the same. And right now, guys, it's completely free. So let me explain how that helped us get anything I wanted published in the biggest newspaper in that particular city. Now, we find the most influential newspapers in the city we operate in. And then we contact them. We find out their news and editorial guidelines. Just find out what they are. We review all of their sections in their paper and all of their sections online to find out which areas of the paper they're looking to receive paid advertorial content in. Now, we found that the paid for or sponsored editorial sections in the property news sections are the best columns to be featured in. Because if you carefully identify the anomalies, you can have a sponsored editorial article get published in a news page without any notice stating it's sponsored or it's paid for editorial or advertorial. Now, to secure the right section, you need to negotiate to advertise in another section of the newspaper with the lowest possible cost for the advert. That converts, of course, to send you more leads and more traffic and more deals. So we negotiate for an article to appear in the property news section with no sponsored editorial or no advertorial headline. Does that make sense? The next step, with the position now agreed, we simply find out the word count, have a journalist that works for us, or you could outsource it to a journalist. Our journalist also works for a national newspaper. Now, we would co-write the exact story that we want to appear in the news after I've drafted out the framework for the story first. Now, this is where we get to react or to continue a story in the media or create a brand new story that will help encourage landlords to let their properties to us or for us to get any message across we want. Now, the spokesperson for your company will appear in the story by name. They'll be talking about how they helped landlords solve their problem. Or you would comment on a national news story as an expert. Just imagine when you read a story in a newspaper, it influences you, right? Just imagine when you see somebody else's name at a company quoted for their expert opinion on that particular story. Now that immediately puts that person on a pedestal, right? And it raises that person's profile instantly. They're now an instant authority that has respect and is to be trusted, right? So if you read an article that appeared as sponsored editorial or paid editorial or advertorial, whatever disclaimer your paper in your city uses these days, you would already be putting up barriers in your mind, saying to yourself that no matter how great their offer is or what they have to say, they're a company that's crafted this advert and paid for this advert or this advertorial to sell something to you. Yes or no? In theory, less people take action or respond when they know it's a paid for advertorial or a sponsored story because it's just not as authentic. Does that make sense? Now imagine reading the exact same editorial, However, it doesn't appear with any headline above. It says nothing about its paid for editorial. It doesn't say anything about its paid for sponsorship or anything like that. It appears on the page in the newspaper as if it's a properly related story written by a journalist that's offering value to landlords, talking about problems most landlords would want to be solved, right? And it focuses 95% on the reader and a 5% only on your company and how your company has helped other landlords with the same problem that has a quote from you or a quote from your company spokesperson. Now, this gives instant credibility to your company. It mentions your company and it positions your company as an expert in that field. Now, that alone enables you to leverage this story in all of your other marketing that you do. Whenever you close deals or whenever you're looking for referrals, you can always reference back to this anchor story in the newspaper that contacted you and your company for a quote, or they contacted you as the expert, or just mentioned your company in the paper. Now, this means you'll be an authority in your city instantly, and you'll be able to leverage that story forever and build on that story and repeat it again the following month and the following month and the following month, right? Does that make sense to you? Can you now see how this will drive landlords with that problem to your company for you to help solve their problem? Now, we've tested this and we've found that this converts at a much higher rate than paid editorial, than paid advertorial, and it adds a level of authority and it positions you and your company as the go-to expert in your field and your city. So, how we leverage that story, published in the newspaper, further to do more business and close more deals. So our journalist will write a story about a change in property legislation. For example, the tax changes for landlords, which are happening right now, the mortgage interest relief, or the EPC changes, or Brexit forcing landlords' returns down, or anything else that squeezes landlords' profits down, or anything relating to the war against landlords. Now, the best method is to speak about the pain that landlords are suffering from problem tenants, from voids, from evictions, and the costs and time associated with evicting the average tenant through the court. Now, this would be a real story, a national news story that's previously published, or a real story for somebody else that you may know. Because the story is focused on landlords' biggest fears. It will resonate with every single landlord who reads it. Does that make sense? In the story, the journalist will subtly suggest how other landlords can avoid having to rely on the court to evict a problem tenant and the costs involved by choosing a company or the right tenant such as yours. And you can give them an expert comment or quotes from the company and include your name and include your company name for maximum leverage and maximum authority. So you would then add a link in the footer of your email, every email you send out, and it will say something along the lines of a headline. So, for example, how landlords can avoid the nightmare and evictions and the costs. Then it'd have a link, read the full story here, published, blank. Okay? Or this secret landlords are using to increase their rent by 20%. Read the full story, published, blank, here in the blank. Okay? Now, there will be a link to the article in the newspaper in your email footer. Now, you should link that footer to the online marketing messages, wherever they are, as an anchor of your authority. And whenever any potential client sees your marketing online or receives an email from you or an offer from you, they will see the link in the footer, which is a link to the story in the newspaper online, and that alone puts you in a position of power. You're now a trusted authority. You're now an authority in the landlord's mind before you have even met the landlord. Now, this is a strategic deal closing method and positioning that I learned from a mentor of mine, Ryan Holiday. Now, that gives clients confidence, and it convinces them, and it persuades them to do business with you before you have even met them. Now, this only works by leveraging the power of the media to your advantage. Now, it doesn't actually cost any more than just a couple of £100 and some lateral thinking. But the value it returns is worth hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds to us already. Because over time, it will have been responsible for over £1 million of revenue in that one particular city, as it continues to convert more and more and more new landlords to work with us. Now, this is one of our highest converting strategies we have. Hey podcasters, thanks for listening. Please go ahead and share the podcast with your friends, and if you're not already subscribed, make sure you subscribe so I can instantly deliver my best business tactics and entrepreneurial content to you the second it's released. Does that sound like a good deal?